Hello, all, and welcome back to another episode of TV and Us, a conversation show about the TV series we just can't stop talking about. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And each season we focus on a different show, reviewing it episode by episode, and we invite you to watch along with us. Right now, we are reviewing Severance Season 1, and today we're on Episode 5 titled, it's a very long title, The Grim Barbarity of Optics and Design. If you haven't watched this episode yet, this is your spoiler alert. Please check it out before continuing to listen to the rest of our conversation. Okay, Sarah, kick us off with an episode summary for Episode 5.
Irving and Dylan confront Bert about his lies. Mark and Helly discover a strange new department.
Ooh, yes. Okay. Well, let's kick off with our episode titles for Episode 5. What is yours?
Mine is Big Feely Baggage.
Nice. My episode title is Kind Eyes.
Ah, yes. That was one of my other options. It's so
nice.
Good. And then watching Mark try to have kind eyes is very hilarious.
Horrifying. Honestly, horrifying. I'm going to have nightmares about that. Okay, let's start off with our thoughts about Episode 5. Sarah, we are squarely past the halfway point of this season. I'm so curious to hear your thoughts. Some things happened in this episode. We had a little bit of momentum from Episode 4. All right, things are happening, things are going. What did you think of Episode 5?
I'm just really hoping for an O&D coup. Like that, I have put all of my eggs in that basket. And I think that would be really fun to see Bert just leading the charge to overthrow this company. I think that would be so much fun. And this episode keeps that hope alive. And I'm really appreciating that. Yeah, a lot of stuff happens in this episode. It's a good continuation of the previous one. We see Helly after she survives her attempt and how she is processing through being stuck in her own personal hell. And then we see Mark trying to be a good leader and empathizing with her and trying to make things better for her. And then obviously we have Dylan and Irv and their little confrontation with Bert. I did not have it on my Severance bingo card for there to be a Romeo and Juliet storyline in this. So that is surprising to me. So, this episode is just keeping going with this trend of just having more questions and not really having any answers. And we're just seeing how the characters are responding to various things, and I'm just curious to see where we're going to land. There's a lot of little set pieces throughout this that have a lot of meaning and are doing a really good job of pointing to facets in our world and giving us things to think about. But I'm curious to see where the show goes and where it ends up and kind of what it says about the thesis of this show as a whole. And that's kind of still outstanding. So I don't know. We'll find out, I guess, in the next few episodes, maybe what this show is trying to say about our world around us and kind of what its theory of the case is, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've got 4 episodes left, the second half, for them to figure out how they want to land this plane that seems to have so many big, juicy questions that are attached to it. I think one of the scenes that I think when I think of Severance, I often think of the scene, and it's the baby goat sequence. And I'm curious your thoughts about that, because when I was watching this the first time, I was like, what is going on? I had 1,000,001 questions beforehand, but now I have about 2,000,001 questions. And the second time watching this, I'm also just trying to understand more of what that perhaps represents and signifies. It's so visually interesting in this incredibly sterile fluorescent lighting, very angular space, to have this really odd and very jarring visual of this like man, older man in a suit nursing a whole host of baby goats, uh, and him also saying they're not ready, it isn't time, which I don't think I registered and didn't like mull on that as much the first time around, but the second this time I'm like, there seems that feels like such an intentional line that is included and associated with that visual that I'm just, my brain's going in a million different directions of what that could possibly mean, and maybe like what Lumen is up to, like what is this corporation, because I think that's something that's also kind of still a big question mark. No one knows what kind of company this is, and uh there's some theories from some of Mark's sister's friend group around them being in the tech industry. Another theory was pharmaceutical. Both great guesses, but we as the audience still have no idea either, and so I think that will be fascinating to see how that unfolds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then what else is lurking in that maze? Like I thought that it was interesting that Mark was surprised by that, or he seemed to be surprised by that, because I mean, Mark's been around this company for a couple of years now. He's walked these hallways before, but apparently he has not ventured into this part of the maze yet, maybe. And so it just makes me curious of like what else is in there. It would be, I don't know, I think my reaction to that probably would have been like, okay, what other doors are around here that I can open and see what else they're into? Because it's so out there. I think where I'm at with the show is I kind of don't trust that the show is going to answer my questions. So in some ways, I've just stopped asking questions and I'm just kind of like, yeah, that's a weird thing. The whole show is weird. So, like, it's fine. You can have a dude nursing baby goats in part of the maze. That tracks with this weird show. So I think I've almost become like numb to the weird stuff, which is probably what is supposed to happen to the people who are working on the severed floor, is that they should just like disassociate from everything and just only focus on the work. So if that's what the show is going for, they have succeeded in me, because I'm just like, okay, let's just let that happen. Sure, there's goats. Why not?
You are the employee of the week, Sarah.
Well, thank
You
you.
are
I will
successfully
accept.
successfully accomplishing that 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 is probably a good posture to have for how we will continue on this journey of the show. Meanwhile, I'm over here being like, you better dang explain this thing, okay? I need to know what's happening with the goats. You can't throw a visual like that and not have a rhyme or reason to it, because I am the metaphor person. I love finding those and thinking about them in movies and TV. And that one seems so interesting. Like, are they farming the goats for properties, their milk, to make, medical products with them or drugs with them? Like, what is going on? But then there seems to be no sense of like organization in that room. It's just literally just like an entirely empty, very small room with not a lot of goats. And this is such a contrast to the other room that we get to see a little bit more of in this episode, which we saw a glimpse of in the previous one, but the room with O&D. And that looks like a true like manufacturing floor. An entire production line is operating there. We don't know what they're doing there, but there's a sense of scale and production that's happening. This goat room is literally like an empty room that, when you moved into a home, you like throw all your like junk in there, and you open it occasionally, be like, I should probably do something with that. And there's just a lone single man in there nursing them. What? What? I don't know. I don't even have enough information to like generate hypotheses at this point. So what I went with was like something around, medical technology and testing and experiments. That
Mm-hmm.
seems plausible.
I like it. I like it. I went the goat yoga route.
Oh,
Um,
very
so
good.
I went in a very different direction than you did. Yours is probably more in line though, because I don't think that Lumen is breeding goats so that there can be more goat yoga in the world.
You know, right there with waffle parties, maybe it's something that Dylan can earn
There you
his
go.
perks
Yeah,
for.
maybe
Goat
that's the
yoga
next
party.
perk.
It's just for morale.
Yeah.
That's why they say they're not ready yet because they're too small to do the
Oh,
yoga. They haven't learned the positions and the
yes,
poses.
that's true.
Makes sense.
That's true. Important work is being done in this goat room. Got to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that our goat yoga is on point. But I do think that this whole like goat room thing brings up a really good point though, because I I am watching this 2 years plus after it came out. And so I know people's reactions and I know people's disappointment with where the show goes. And I know that people are upset with where the show goes. And so I have that context, even though I don't know the specifics, I know the reactions. And so I think probably part of why I'm just like, yeah, that's weird, that's cool, is because
Mm.
I'm not trying to get as upset as everybody else did by the end of this show. There's enough going on in the world. I don't need to be upset about a show that's going to make some controversial choices. So I'm just going to try and be like easy come, easy go, go with the flow and just see where this weird journey will take us without trying to get like too invested because I don't know. I'm not trying to be upset about a show right now. I just want to enjoy myself. And so if that means just like accepting a weird goat room, we're going to accept a weird goat room. It is what it is.
You are wise to emotionally manage and anticipate. This is very good.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you have the beauty and the blessing of a little bit, not full hindsight, but perhaps you've seen those around you get real worked up and you're like, I could use my energy in other places. So let's just
Mhm.
let the goats wash over you. Yep. Let the perpetuity
That's what
wings wash over you. Wellness
has.
check.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still so intrigued because the Lumen headquarters is like the Mary Poppins bag of office spaces. Like,
Hmm.
this thing is so big. How in the world do you have so many rooms? It's a whole maze that you're walking through. You have the giant O&D department down in the basement. Like, what? No wonder they've spent so much time trying to map this thing out. It is a literal maze and it goes on forever. That's wild to me. That's
Hmm.
so much infrastructure.
Well, it's also so smart of the show to give us, as the viewer, like no sense of place. Like we never really have spatial awareness at any point in the show. We see they go down the elevator and then they walk through a series of identical hallways that are constantly twisting and curving in unexpected ways. And then they end up in the room. And then I don't know, like, are we to the left, to the right to get to O&D? No idea. And so that feeling of being lost, uh, we also feel as a viewer, as do these employees that are also just like, how do we get there again? Like they are lost just as much as we are, and I think that adds to some like really fun sense of like mysteriousness of all of those uh random rooms that we discover. And sometimes I don't even know if we could like really get back to that room again because all of the hallways look the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hence the map. But Mark is probably not trying to map his way to the goat room. So
Nope.
that's kind of sad. He won't be able to go do goat yoga with those goats until
No.
Like, that's
No,
just very
they're not.
sad
It's
for him.
not
He could
time yet.
probably
It's
enjoy
not
it.
time.
He
That
must
man was
wait.
so distressed too.
He was.
Like it's the same feeling when like you are peeing and someone walks into your stall and you're like, please no, don't come in here. It's the same level of distress. He seemed so frazzled.
He did. He did. I mean, he's probably not used to other humans barging into his goat room, you
No,
know? Like,
it's
he's
true.
real tucked away back there. And the lights weren't even on. As they were walking, the lights turned on. So
That's
he's
right.
probably alone just all the time, which,
But the
I mean,
goats.
that can't be great for you.
Yeah, what
But
department
he
is
has his
that?
goats,
That does not look fun. I don't want to be in that department.
right? Me neither.
Yeah. I'd rather be in O&D. O&D looks fun.
Right? O&D is legit. I'm so excited that they keep going to O&D. It's so cool.
Hmm.
I'm here for O&D.
Yeah, yeah. So we learn a bunch of new things about O&D, one of which is that apparently Bert had lied about how many employees they had working in O&D. He said there were two, there's actually seven, and that causes the MDR department to get a little riled up, particularly our friend Dylan, uh, because there's been a lie, and therefore the suspicions have been ignited about this potential coup. Tell me your thoughts about that whole sequence and what this episode does with the world expanding with O&D.
I Dylan just cracks me up. I think that he's such a funny character. And just that whole scene between Irv and Bert, and they're having this moment, and they're friends, possibly something more. Like, they just connect with each other and they're just vibing. And then there's Dylan, who's like, no, Bert is evil. We must keep him away. He is trying to throw a coup. He is going to destroy you. He's going to destroy me. He's going to destroy everything because he is evil. He's part of O&D. And I loved that mix of personalities and mix of perspectives, and the way that is shot. And you'll see, Bert and Irv together, and then Dylan's kind of off to the side, and then he'll just like insert himself in, and then he'll go back off to the side a little bit. So he's always lurking around, always seeing what's going on. And I just thought that that was so much fun. And then it leads to a whole like Romeo and Juliet business where Irv is bringing Irv and Bert are bringing together these two departments that for years have been taught to hate each other and mistrust each other. And now maybe we will have some sort of a reconciliation between these two departments. Hopefully, this story will go better than the Shakespeare version, and that, not everybody will die in this version. But I really just appreciate these two, and their bond over art is now maybe leading a way for these two departments that have been so separated intentionally by the company to maybe come together and, I don't know, join forces. Maybe, like, I'm really hoping for an O&D coup. That is what I want. And I want all of our heroes to participate in said coup because I think that that would be fun.
Yeah. And I think what's fascinating is that clearly there's something about these two departments that if they were to come together, would really be something, because the corporation is spending so much energy trying to pit them against each other. Like the accidental photocopy that got sent over
Mm-hmm.
to Irv with the coup painting, and then the realization that that same painting has been used, but the badges have been swapped to showcase the other department as the villain. It's just such great commentary on like the narrative creation that organizations will spin up in order to maintain systems of control, which that there's a whole thought train that we could go on that front. But even just at a tactical level, the fact that the company is spending so much time keeping them apart means that something about the information they both hold must be significant if they were to come together. Otherwise, like, why keep why keep them so separate and spend the energy on it? In general, the characters in the show have often talked about how Lumon has always tried to keep every department separate from each other. But there seems to be very intentional like campaign efforts to do so, and there must be something there.
Well, and I love in our review of the last episode, we talked about the power of art and how, art can open you up to new ideas. And that's why it's important to like read books
Mm.
and all of these things and how important art is in our lives. And then this episode seems to show the power of propaganda and how propaganda is art that is used for maybe like for often a sinister purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that we see that playing out here because we see that Milchek sends down those images to the copier. Irv and then Dylan see them and then they react to that. And you see that those things reinforce this narrative that they have already established within the company. And I think Milchek even says he did that to prevent Irv from hanging out with Bert. And we learn that that is what happened, that Irv had kept his distance from Bert. And as they're talking together down in O&D, the three of them, they realize like, oh no, they've been trying to keep us apart. And I loved that progression because you see the propaganda happen and then that leads itself to all of the history of these narratives that the corporation is spinning to keep these two departments apart. And then you see the actual characters grappling with that, the real life implications, and starting to ask some questions that maybe they hadn't asked before. So I thought that was just a really fun setup and a cool way of looking at propaganda in maybe a little bit of a different light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what's really interesting too is that for most of the show, we don't often see these characters with strong outbursts of emotion. They are pretty even keel for the most part. So when there are moments that are more emotional spikes for them, it's always notable. And it's interesting that it's this piece of art that has ignited such intensity and emotion for both sides of the departments on this potential conflict that seems to be brewing, but is actually being like fanned by the corporation. But it's smart because Lumon understands the power of art as well. It's not just them telling these different departments about each other, but to use something like this imagery that's incredibly dynamic. And there's this very like violent imagery and the lighting and all of that. They understand that that ignites emotion and then they can channel that emotion in the direction that they want it to. So I think that the ability for Lumon to also see the power of art and the way that the motion is created and then channeled for their benefit is also really fascinating too. So good job on Lumon for understanding and deploying tactics that are highly effective, but also incredibly powerful for their very sinister purposes.
Which is why I'm a little surprised that the book was just left in the conference room. Like it makes me think that there's something more there and maybe this is another test or something because like we talked about, I think it was in the last episode, that book visually looks so different than everything else in the office and there are security cameras everywhere. So how did they not see that book? Also, Milchek was reading the book to see if there were any hidden messages in there. And then obviously like something happened and he was pulled away. I think Helly tried to escape again, so he left the book. But wouldn't you come back to that? I don't know. If they take these things so seriously and have so many rules and such tight control and all of these things, they're actually really bad at that because we just have employees wandering the halls willy-nilly. We have this book floating around the office willy-nilly. So either there's something deeper going on here or these guys are just really, really bad at their jobs. And I'm curious to see where this goes because they're not doing great.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's just so many questions I have in general around the surveillance system of Lumen. Even with the way the episode starts with Helly in the elevator and the fact that all of these characters are also just like roaming around the halls, they're not really doing their job. uh, you'd think that Lumen would see and know. So is this intentional? Like they are allowing for that wandering so that they can observe, understand what these employees are up to, and then strike when there's a moment that they believe is most incriminating for them, or do they really just not know? And while we see that this organization is very high tech in a lot of ways, perhaps they aren't in the full extent that I would have expected them to. I feel like sometimes, especially in like sci-fi genre movies, TV shows, we just assume that the big corporate entity is like very, very advanced in their technology, and like perhaps not. So I think that's definitely an open question that I had watching this episode too. Is like, how much is Lumen and the powers that be are they watching? We've seen Harmony watch her computer screens and see like security camera footage. So clearly they exist, but how closely are they watching is kind of another question too. So that I could see it going either way, and that was a question that I had with this episode as well.
And then speaking of security, the beginning of the episode when Helly is attempting suicide and she comes up in the elevator, it very clearly shows that the security guard desk is unmanned. And then when Mark comes down a little while later, Judd, who is always there when Mark is there, is at the desk. And so I found that really interesting as well, because it's not just the security in the maze and on the severed level, but it's the security in the building as a whole. And there's some weird stuff with that too. So I don't know. Again, it's just one of those things where I'm like, this doesn't make sense, but we're just going to roll with it. You might just have really, really bad security, or there might be something shady going on. Whatever. We'll find out. Thankfully,
Just
Helly is okay.
rolling with the punches, chill as a
We're
compute
just
as a
going.
cucumber, happy to be
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, dude.
I love
We're
it.
not gonna get too worked up. We're just gliding on through. No big deal.
I need your energy in relationship to the show, but like me with my life. That's what I need. Just happy to be here, rolling with the punches. Some things happen. Okay, it's all good. We're just rolling with it.
Which that's not how I am with my life, because I need energy to be upset about things in my life. So I can't use that energy being upset about this show. So, we're just making sure that we have enough energy to be upset about the things that I actually need to be upset about.
Oh, it's too good. Yeah. Even that we must ration out in all of the most important places. Love it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, other big things we wanted to mention with this episode.
Yeah, I'm gonna say something that I never thought that I was going to say about this show.
Oh,
And that
okay. I'm
is,
ready.
in this episode, Rickon is spot on. He is so annoying and he's just the worst a lot of the time. But in this episode, they used him so strategically and it made for such fun and funny moments. And I thought that was masterful, their use of Rickon, because in too heavy of doses, he's too much. And it messes up with like the flow and the momentum of the show, and it can just be a lot, his type of humor and what he brings. But in this episode, for me, he was doled out just perfectly, and you get to see his influence as the employees are reading the book, and then you get to see him, freaking out when his wife is about to have a baby, and all of his shenanigans with that were just so funny. So I'm shockingly excited to maybe see more of Rickon in the future,
Wow.
as long as they use him appropriately like this.
See the facts of Severance. Clear dosage needed. Otherwise, a
Hmm.
lot is a lot. A lot is a lot.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I mean, with that whole sequence, I mean, I just kept thinking about they spend so much time, so much of this episode with Mark's sister and with Rickon, and this whole adventure that she goes on to find coffee, and she meets this like very mysterious ethereal woman in the other cabin. It just, we spend so much time in that whole sequence, nearly like I would say, I don't know, a third of the episode. And I just kept thinking about like there's got to be something with this whole birth theme that seems to come up again and again and again in the episodes, that seems very prominent because there's so many other ways we could spend our time with this world, and the show chooses to use so much of those minutes, with these two characters that really aren't even our main set of four that we are following. And so there's got to be something very significant there that I don't really understand fully yet, and even having watched the show, I'm like still like trying to piece it all together. But this theme of birth is talked about so often and depicted so often that, I don't know if there's something there with like, you know, these people that have like chosen to sever their brains, and how that there's this dissonance between like the natural state of how we were born into the world, and then this like very uh corporate scientific capitalist engine that is disrupting that organic nature of how we were created, and this very unnatural procedure. I don't know, there's probably something there. There's a there, I don't know what it is yet, but it was fascinating to like spend a little bit of time thinking about it.
I really like that. Uh, I was focused on the fact that that rich pregnant lady is going to show up in the show later. So that's why we're spending so much time with her. So we will see her again. I don't know in what capacity, but because it was so important, she will play some future role. We don't know what. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where I was at while she was searching for coffee. But I do appreciate your search for deeper meanings, and uh, the fact that you are going after these metaphors, and I support you in that.
I probably need a little bit more dose of your approach, but I'm like, this is our second time around. We're gonna figure it out, maybe. I'm like, okay, birth theme. Let me view the next four episodes with the lens
Yeah,
of the birth theme. See if we find
yeah,
something
it's
different.
great.
There's like a mound
Sure,
of clay
yeah.
on the table, and I'm like, oh, surely if I like uh stick my fingers and my feet to the ceiling and like reverse like Spider Pig, look at this thing, maybe I was viewing it from the wrong angle, and it's actually like a clay figure of, I don't know, a baby goat, and I just couldn't see that
There
from
you
like
go.
on the floor on all fours, you know, like maybe that'll it'll all click together.
Okay, so I am going to hang some kelp, and maybe that will help you as you work on your metaphors, because I'm bad at metaphors. So I don't know that I will be much help otherwise, but I can
Here,
hang some kelp for you.
I need you to create some very emotional, what do they call it? Like emotional dead space, vulnerable dead space, so that I can birth some
Yes.
theories into existence, okay, by the end of this season.
So I need to reveal some secrets, create a soul void so that
Oh,
you can
so,
work on your metaphors.
yeah, because I'm going to labor over these as if I'm birthing
Excellent.
them, okay? We're going to do it.
Okay, I support you in this.
Oh, we might come up empty. It's fine. There might not
And that's
be
fine.
some theories birthed,
Because
but we will try.
that's all right, because there's
Oh,
still some baby goats, and that's cool.
there are.
So, what else?
There really are. You see the birth theme. They're getting nursed, their babies. Hmm? It's very hand wavy, but huh?
Hmm. I like it. Yeah.
Cool. uh, I'm gonna in my closet have just like I'll be like a police detective searching for a serial killer. I'll just have like a
Yes.
screenshot of baby goats. I'm gonna have a screenshot of like birth lady in the birth center, retreat center, and like just loose red thread connecting them somehow as they are literally on like opposite sides of the wall. They're probably unrelated, but we will find some connection point. uh, my map will begin now.
Hmm. I believe in you. You got this.
Great. I needed that. I needed that. It's my confidence wanes with every episode that passes. Okay. Any other last big things we want to mention before we give out some TVNS awards?
I don't
Hit them all.
think so. I mean, I guess the only other big thing, because we got a little distracted by the goats, which is understandable because why are there goats? Uh, is Mark and Helly kind of starting to bond a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. You know,
Yep.
he rescues her from Miss Casey and they go on a little field trip and he shows her the map and she shuts him down real quick. But then they find some goats and her tune changes a little bit and she's willing to help him with his map because his drawing sucks. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's an interesting little team up and I'm curious how that might go because Helly and Mark have such different personalities, but it's interesting that they seem to have a similar goal, or maybe they're not the same goal, but they are maybe related goals. And so I'm curious to see how that goes because their approach to achieving the goal is probably very different. So how is that going to play out? What kind of interesting shenanigans are those two going to get into as they continue to work on the map?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I jotted down that note too of, well, I was a little more focused on Mark, but the team up is interesting. But Mark specifically is fascinating because just the previous episode, he shreds the map from Petey and he is doing his like obedient boss thing of being like, this is contraband. We got to get rid of it. We Lumen's great, and we see a shift in tone for him. He's making some real choices, some rebellious choices. So something has clicked in him too, or starting to click in him, where he is no longer playing that role of we must follow the protocol and I'm here to do my job and I don't care about any of this rebellion stuff. And Petey was, I don't know, whatever. So there's something that's happening in Mark where he's making some real choices, which I know you've been waiting for. It's just some agency from him.
Yes, I love agency in our protagonists. Yes. Oh, it's lovely to see. It's great when characters make choices. They could be good choices or bad choices, but man, we want some choices made, and finally we have them here. And I think another interesting part of all of that is I don't remember which episode. It was a couple episodes ago, maybe. I don't know. Maybe it was this one. But there is this almost like looming threat of they need to get their numbers up and they need to do their job. And like Mark has been told to do better, Harmony has been told that they need to do better. Like there is a focus on these employees are not doing their job, they are not being productive enough, and they need to up what they're doing. And this is another episode where I don't think anybody does any work. And so I do find that
Mm.
also funny. You know, the more time they are spending outside of their desks and away from their cubes, the more rebellious they are being. So like that little step of rebellion to step away from their cubes during working hours is then kind of like snowballing into these bigger leaps of rebellion that they're taking. And so I'm curious to see if or when Harmony slash Milchek slash someone else will maybe try and crack down on the group. And if that happens, then how will the group respond? And as they continue to snowball out of control, what other shenanigans are they going to get into now that they feel maybe more untethered from their desks than they ever have been?
Mm-hmm. Yep. No one's doing much work.
Those scary numbers are just running
They're just,
amok.
yeah, all
So
the eels are running around, swimming
the
around.
eels,
The eels are not running,
yes,
they're swimming around. Yes.
that too. Whatever. Maybe they're like
Whatever.
super powered eels and they can also
No,
run. And
they are
that's why they
running.
have to be taken out because they're
Yes,
extra terrifying.
this makes sense. Yeah.
Excellent.
Land and sea.
Land and sea. Ooh, that's so scary. Hence the scary numbers. It all makes sense. We
Yep.
got it. Dylan was right all along.
Oh. All right, let's give out some awards. The first category is Employee of the Week. This is given to a character on the show that we would like to acknowledge and celebrate for whatever reason we decide. What did you pick for this one?
I want to give it to Miss Casey for coming back with a whole stack of notebooks to replace the one that Mark ruined. She wasn't going to let that happen again. She is now prepared, and I respect that.
This is a treat for Miss Casey this week because she's getting another award from me, Employee of the Week, as
Ooh.
well, when she so kindly offers to provide a hug. She says, upon request, I can provide a hug to Helly.
Oh, it's so good. And then I love that throughout that whole scene, Dylan keeps trying to like annoyingly shoot
Yeah.
his shot, and she just rejects him outright over and over again.
Yep.
Oh, it's so good. It's such a
Mhm.
fun little dynamic happening during that.
Okay, next category is Move the Needle Moment. What's your choice?
My choice is towards the end when Dylan asks the all important question: why are there two versions of the same painting?
So
It's
good.
like, you got it, buddy. You're almost there. You are on the right track. Just
So
keep
good.
walking. You'll get there.
And it's significant that he gets to have that line. Oh,
Yes. Yep.
glorious. Love it. My choice for this Move the Needle Moment Award is the baby goats. I cannot get over the baby goats. That just feels like the world was
Yes.
already very much expanding and complex and fascinating, but their baby goats really just take it to another dimension. So the needle has been moved.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not wrong. That
Mhm.
just totally threw a wrench in everything.
Okay, the next category is achievement in corporatees. What is your choice for the line for this word?
Yeah. I want to give it to when Harmony says, have a productive day, after she totally gaslights Mark and blames him for Helly attempting suicide. Oh, man.
That's a great one. That's a really good one. Oh, it's good. My choice is Milchek to Mark when he says, do you know how to make your eyes kind? In trying to help Mark
Yep.
figure out how to navigate this very hard moment where he's about to have Helly back again. And uh, the concept of like packaging, packaging things up well, delivering hard messages. It's a whole thing in the corporate space. And they've really distilled that down well for Milchik.
Yeah. Yeah. Make your eyes kind. That'll solve the whole problem. Then it's, you need nothing else other than that.
Yeah. Yeah. Even though like
Yeah.
our protocols, our procedures, our system is all the same, but like if the
Yes.
delivery is okay and if you
Yeah.
feel the warm fuzzies, then we're fine, surely.
Yeah.
That's how that works.
Well, and I love that Mark kind of goes out of his way in this episode to empathize with Helly and like
Mm.
try to make space for her. Like he's tried to do that throughout the season, but I feel like he tries extra hard in this episode. So it's funny the contrast between those two. Milchek is just like, oh yeah, just have kind eyes and you're fine. You don't need to do anything else. And Mark is like, no, I think we need to do something else than just have kind eyes.
Yep.
So that was an interesting contrast.
Yeah, it's so good. His attempt at it is really great. That actor's doing some great stuff there in that scene. Okay, looking ahead. What are you hoping to see? Excited to see some O&D coup action?
Mm-hmm.
What
Yep.
else?
Honestly, top of my list. That's pretty much my list, is the O&D coup. That's really
Nice.
what I'm looking for. I want to hang out with Christopher Walken some more. He's so much fun. I love Bert and Irv together. They are hilarious. And I want to know what this coup is. I want to see the rest of O&D because they're cooking up some stuff in there, and I want to see what it is. So just more time in O&D, please. That's what I want.
Yes. So good. I just want answers, and I will continue to make answers for myself, even if they don't make sense, in order to find some sense of uh, catharsis. So, my birth theme theory, I will continue to view for the next episode to see if there's some insight and just a different lens to watch this show through. So, we're going to birth some theories.
No, I like it.
Goat yoga
I
included.
support this. Yeah, goat yoga. Let's go. We got this. Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
I'm a big fan of making up your own answers. I think that this is going to be so much fun. Yes. Let's just make up our own answers to all the crazy things in this show. Sounds great.
Perfect. Love it. All right. Well, we will be here to make up some answers and wait for some juicy coups to happen potentially. We'll be here to see how it all unfolds. In the meantime, this was our review and discussion of episode 5 of Severance. You can find it available to stream on Apple TV+. Thank you for listening to today's episode of TV and Us. Our name sums it up. We're big fans of TV and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories. So everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you spent time with us today as we continued our journey through Severance Season 1. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune into your favorite shows. Drop us a rating and review, letting us know your thoughts about episode 5. You can connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at TVNSPod, or you can email us at tvnspod@gmail.com. We will be back soon next week to discuss episode 6. We hope you have an amazing week, and we'll talk again soon.